remember the exact second it happened, because time did that strange thing it always does in the ER. It stretched and snapped at the same time. One moment I was adjusting an IV line, listening to the steady rhythm of a monitor, thinking about how my coffee had gone cold hours ago, and the next moment, everything in the room changed. You know that feeling when the air itself feels different? Thicker, heavier, like it's warning you before your brain catches up. That's what it felt like when the patient's eyes shifted. Not rolled back, not dramatic, just unfocused. Like someone had quietly turned the lights off inside him. And that's when I heard it. The monitor didn't scream yet. It didn't blare alarms or flash red. It hesitated. A small stutter in the rhythm. A tiny hiccup that most people would miss. But I didn't. Because when you've been a nurse long enough, you learn that the body whispers before it shouts. I glanced at the chart again, mostly out of habit. Middle-aged male. Came in complaining of chest tightness, nausea, and what he described as a weird pressure that wouldn't go away. The kind of description that lives in a gray area. The kind doctors sometimes label as anxiety when they're busy or tired, or just human. He'd been stable. Not great, but not alarming. Vitals borderline. Labs pending. Nothing that made anyone rush. Except me. I'd felt it the moment I walked into the room. That quiet unease that settles between your shoulders. The feeling you get when something doesn't add up, even if you can't explain why yet. I'd mentioned it earlier. Casually. Carefully. The way nurses learn to speak when they don't want to sound dramatic. "Hey, can we keep a closer eye on him?" I'd said to the resident during rounds. Something feels off. The resident didn't even look up from the tablet. "He's fine," he said. "We'll reassess when labs come back." Fine. That word. I've heard it used 1,000 times, and almost every time it's said with confidence, like a full stop at the end of a sentence. Conversation over, concern dismissed. I didn't argue. I nodded, like we're trained to do, like good nurses do, like just nurses do. But I stayed. I lingered in the room longer than necessary, pretending to organize supplies that were already organized, straightening sheets that didn't need straightening, checking vitals again even though I'd checked them 5 minutes earlier. That's when I noticed the sweat. Not the normal ER sweat. Not the I'm nervous sweat. This was cold. Beaded along his forehead even though the room was cool. His skin had taken on a grayish tone that didn't match the numbers on the monitor. I leaned in slightly. "How are you feeling right now?" I asked. He opened his mouth to answer, and nothing came out. His eyes flicked to mine, wide now, scared. And then the monitor dipped. Just a little. That was the second everything snapped into place in my head. I didn't think. I didn't ask permission. I didn't wait for confirmation. I hit the call button and raised my voice. "I need someone in here. Now." There's a certain tone nurses use in emergencies. It's not loud for the sake of being loud. It's sharp, controlled. It cuts through the noise of the unit. The resident came in first, irritation already written on his face. "What's going on?" he asked, a little too casually. I pointed to the monitor. "He's dropping. Look at him." As if on cue, the alarm finally decided to wake up. The room filled with sound. Beeping. Faster now. Wrong. The patient gasped. Not a dramatic gasp. A shallow, desperate pull of air that barely filled his lungs. I moved automatically. Oxygen mask. Adjusted. Rechecked vitals. "His pressure's crashing," I said. The resident frowned, finally looking closer. "That doesn't make sense." I almost laughed, because that's the thing about emergencies. They rarely make sense at first. They don't care about your expectations or your textbook patterns. They just happen. Another nurse rushed in, then another. Someone called for the attending. The room that had felt quiet and almost boring minutes ago was suddenly crowded, tense, alive with movement. The patient's hand grabbed my wrist. It wasn't strong. It was desperate. "Don't leave," he whispered. "I'm right here," I said, leaning closer so he could hear me over the noise. "You're not alone." His eyes searched my face, like he was trying to anchor himself to something real. I've seen that look before. It's the look people get when their body betrays them without explanation, when fear becomes physical. The attending arrived, breathless, eyes scanning the scene. "What do we have?" he asked. Before the resident could answer, I spoke. He was stable, then suddenly dropped. Skin changes, pressure falling fast, altered awareness. This started before the monitor alarmed. The attending looked at me for a brief second. Just a glance. But in that glance, something shifted. Respect, maybe. Or at least attention. Orders started flying. Meds, fluids, more monitoring. The room became a choreography of practiced movements. And then it happened. The line on the monitor flattened just enough to make everyone freeze. Not gone, but wrong. Very wrong. There's a sound people make in those moments. A collective intake of breath. Like the room itself is holding on, hoping the next beat comes. It didn't. "Start compressions," the attending said. My hands were already there. I don't remember making the decision. My body just moved. Muscle memory took over. Training kicked in. Fear stepped aside. I pressed down, counting out loud, my voice steadier than I felt. 1, 2, 3. The patient's body moved under my hands, fragile and heavy all at once. Somewhere behind me, someone was prepping meds. Someone else was calling out times. The resident stood to the side, pale now, silent. I remember thinking, strangely, about how earlier he'd been labeled fine. How close we'd come to missing this. How easily this could have gone another way. We worked him for what felt like hours, though later I learned it was minutes. Time warps in emergencies. Seconds stretch into lifetimes. Then finally, the monitor responded. A beat, then another. Weak, but there. The room exhaled. I stepped back, my arms shaking now that adrenaline was loosening its grip. Sweat dripped down my back. My hands trembled. The attending looked at the monitor, then at the patient, then at me. "Good catch," he said quietly. Not loudly, not dramatically, but it landed heavier than anything else that day. The patient was stabilized enough to be transferred. As they wheeled him out, he reached for me again, his fingers brushing my sleeve. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely there. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "You did the hard part," I told him, but I knew that wasn't entirely true. After the room emptied, I leaned against the counter, staring at the now silent bed. The resident finally spoke. "I didn't think..." He started, then stopped. I looked at him. "I know," I said. Not unkindly, just honestly. Because this wasn't about blame. It was about something deeper, something structural, something that happens in hospitals every day. Nurses see things first. We're at the bedside. We notice the small changes, the subtle shifts, the quiet warnings. But too often, we're brushed aside, labeled as overly cautious, emotional, reactive. Just a nurse. That phrase has followed me my entire career. Sometimes said out loud, more often implied. Just a nurse until something goes wrong. Just a nurse until the patient crashes. Just a nurse until someone needs hands that know what to do without being told. Later that night, Long after the adrenaline had faded, I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at the steering wheel. My hands were still shaking. Not from fear anymore, from the weight of it all. I thought about how close that patient had come to being another quiet statistic, another unexpected complication, another chart note that says, sudden decline. I thought about how easily I could have walked away when I was told he was fine, and I thought about how many times I had done exactly that before, trusting the hierarchy instead of my instincts. That realization scared me more than the emergency itself. Because the truth is, the ER doesn't just test your skills, it tests your voice. It asks you, over and over again, whether you're willing to speak up, even when you're not supposed to, even when you're not the loudest person in the room, even when the title on your badge doesn't carry the most authority. That night changed something in me, not in a dramatic movie montage way, but quietly, permanently. I stopped apologizing before speaking. I stopped softening my concerns to make them easier to dismiss. I stopped waiting for permission to trust what my experience was telling me. Because being just a nurse nearly cost someone everything, and that's something I've never been able to forget. I didn't sleep when I got home that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every second over and over, like my brain was afraid that if it let go, something important would disappear. I kept seeing his eyes, that moment when they shifted, when something inside him quietly shut down before anyone else noticed. I kept hearing the monitor hesitate before it screamed, that tiny pause, that warning. What scared me the most wasn't how close he came to losing everything. What scared me was how easily it could have been missed, because if I'm honest, that wasn't the first time I'd felt that instinct and doubted it. It was just the first time it exploded so violently in front of everyone. People think the ER is constant chaos, nonstop alarms and drama. But most of the danger lives in the quiet moments. The waiting, the assumptions, the, let's just see how this goes. And that's where nurses live. We live in the spaces between orders, between vitals, between reassessments. We're the ones who notice when a patient stops joking, when their breathing changes slightly, when their skin doesn't look right under fluorescent lights. But we're also the ones who get told to relax, to wait, to trust the plan. The next shift I worked after that night felt different. The same hallways, same smells, same constant hum of machines and voices. But something inside me had shifted. I walked into a room where a woman sat upright on the bed, arms crossed, clearly uncomfortable. Her chart screamed, low priority, mild symptoms, stable vitals, another wait-and-see case. The resident glanced at her chart and sighed. Probably nothing, he said. And there it was again. That word, nothing. I felt that familiar tension creep up my spine. The quiet alarm in my chest. I looked at the patient instead of the chart. Really looked at her. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't dramatic. She was too still, too controlled, like someone holding themselves together by force. I cleared my throat. I'd like to keep her on the monitor, I said, and maybe get labs sooner rather than later. The resident raised an eyebrow. Why? A week ago, I might have shrugged, might have softened my answer, might have said, just in case. This time I didn't. Because something isn't right, I said, and I don't want to find out too late. There was a pause, a long one. Then he nodded. Okay. It wasn't a victory, it wasn't dramatic, but it mattered. Later, when labs came back, it turned out she wasn't nothing, after all. Not even close. That became the pattern after that night. Not because I suddenly became fearless. I wasn't. I still felt that flutter of doubt every time I spoke up, but I stopped letting it silence me. What most people don't realize is that nurses aren't born confident. We earn it. Slowly. Through moments that almost break us. through nights we carry home in our bones. And that night, the one where I was just a nurse until the patient crashed, it carved something permanent into me. It reminded me why I chose this job in the first place. Not for praise, not for recognition, not to win arguments, but to be there, to notice, to act when it matters most. I ran into the attending weeks later in the hallway. He stopped me, almost as an afterthought. "I reviewed that case," he said. "You caught it early." I thanked him, but inside I felt something more complicated than pride, because I knew how close it had been, how easily it could have gone another way if I'd been quieter, if I'd been more obedient, if I'd stayed in my lane. That's the part no one likes to talk about. Healthcare isn't just about knowledge, it's about hierarchy, about who gets heard and who gets dismissed. And patients don't suffer because people don't care. They suffer because someone didn't listen. I've been called intense since then. Pushy, overly cautious. I don't take it as an insult anymore. Because I remember the feeling of that patient's hand on my wrist, the fear in his eyes, the way the room froze when the monitor went wrong. I remember how quickly fine turned into everything but fine, and I remember how close we came to losing the chance to fix it. That memory keeps me sharp, keeps me grounded. It reminds me that my voice matters, even when it shakes, especially when it shakes. Now, when new nurses ask me how I knew something was wrong, I don't give them a textbook answer. I tell them the truth. You pay attention, I say, and when your gut tells you something's off, you don't ignore it just because someone else is louder. Because being just a nurse isn't a limitation. It's a position, a powerful one. We're the ones at the bedside when everything changes. We're the ones who see patients as people before charts and numbers take over. And sometimes, we're the last line between a quiet warning and a full-blown emergency. That patient survived. I don't know what happened to him after he left the ER. Our paths never crossed again. But I think about him more often than he'll ever know. Not because of what happened in that room, but because of what almost didn't. If you've stayed with me until the end of this story, thank you. Truly. These moments don't live in charts or reports. They live in the people who carry them. If stories like this matter to you, stories from inside the ER, from the voices that don't always get heard, subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for listening.